free Haunt the Concrete party tonight. We will not be having regular classes today or tonight, including capoeira, because this is our biggest party of the year. And I apologize if I don't sound right. I had a tooth get broke the other day, and it's driving me up the wall. But normally I would go live here and I would take you guys on a tour of what we've got set up, all the different festival, carnival style games we got set up, all the fun stuff. But if I do that, my internet's going to go really weird. So I'm not going to be able to show you what's going on over here, but I want you to know that just because it's going to rain does not mean we're canceling. So what we're going to do instead is we'll have like 4 games on the front floor, the level 1 floor, and then we also have a back floor you have to go outside and around the building to get to, but we're going to have 4 games over there as well. Now, what kind of games? But let me get to that. But first, let me talk about the reason you should come out here. Because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot more fun than trick-or-treating because the kids get to play skill games for their candy, and they're going to get a lot more candy here than they would get anywhere else at any time. We always give away over 30,000 pieces of candy across 3 hours. We're going to do the same thing tonight. Now, we might run out of candy early. If that happens and anyone shows up afterward, I will do something to make it up for you. Absolutely. We do that every year if someone shows up a little late. So, make sure you get out here, hopefully by 8 o'clock. That would be the best time to get out here around 8 o'clock. 7 o'clock, you could do that too. We're going to be going from 6 to 9. I know that the city of Newcastle has their event going on today. I believe it ends at 6 or 7 p.m. So you guys could dress up, go check out the city event. You might even already be out there. And then slide on over to us to make sure you get enough candy to last your family for a really long time. And let your kids have some fun playing some games. So what kind of games are we going to play in this year? I got a list. We changed a lot of the games around this year to have a little bit more fun stuff. So I'm going to start off with the new games we have this year. The first one is Zombie Nerf Hunt or Zombie Nerf Shootout. So for this one, we got those really cool, I can't remember the brand of them. They're Nerf, but I think they were called Rapid Strike or I don't know. There was a particular series they had that shot the little yellow balls. They shoot really hard. We've got some of those over there and a bunch of targets set up. It's going to be kind of dark on that floor where they can use those Nerf guns to do a shootout to earn candy. It'll be a lot of fun. I think that's the one that's my favorite of the new games we're doing this year. One of the other new games we're doing this year, we're calling Swamp Doctor or Alligator Dentist or something like that. Basically, we have these little toys that are like alligators' mouths, and you can push the teeth down one at a time. But if you push the wrong tooth, it bites you, right? It's just a little kid's toy. And we're going to have a couple of those set up where you earn candy based on how many teeth you can push in. So that game, before it snaps. So that game's going to be like really geared for the younger kids. Yes, this really is for all ages. You can bring kids, young that can play the games. Teenagers can come play the games. It doesn't matter. So like the Zombie Nerf Shootout one, that one's geared more towards preteens, teens, older kids, stuff like that. I said the next new one was Swamp Doctor. The third new one we're doing this year, we're just calling it Candy Pong. For any adults that have played, you're going to know what this is based off of. But basically, there's a pyramid of cups that each have different amounts of candy in them, and your job will be to bounce the ping pong ball into the cup. You get the ping pong ball in the cup, you get to win the candy, right? So that's another one of the games that's going to be at our free Haunt the Concrete event. So if you are anywhere in the Newcastle, Tuttle, Blanchard, South Oklahoma City, Westmore, West Norman area, you're going to want to come check this out tonight, right? Especially our students. This is always our biggest event every year. Last year was one of our smaller ones, and we still had over 300 people come through. It's a lot of fun. I get it. Since we have to do it inside because of the rain, it might get a little crowded at times. So that might be where some of y'all might benefit from coming a little earlier, and some might benefit from coming later. Just to make sure that we don't overfill the area. But basically, there's going to be a walkthrough from the front floor. You come in one of the front doors and come around, and there'll be the 4 games there. Those are going to be more the little kids-based games. The lights will be on over here. But when you go over to the other side on the back floor, the lights will be off. We'll have some mood lighting. We'll have all kinds of stuff to make it a little spookier. And that's where we're going to have the Candy Pong, the Zombie Nerf Hunt, or Alucard's Battle Arena, because the person running this game is doing a vampire thing this year. So we're going to have Alucard's Battle Arena. That's where the kids can, we just use pool noodles, like half pool noodles, and the kids can sword fight with one of our staff members in order to try to win candy from them. It's usually one of our most popular games, so we kept that one, as well as pumpkin toss. I know all ages like the pumpkin toss game. That's the one where you get a bunch of candy and you got to throw it into a pumpkin, and whatever you get into the pumpkin, you get to keep, right? So that's always a really fun game that can be played at any age. Ninja Go Shootout is one of our most popular games we do at other events. So this one, there'll be 4 or 5 cups with different amounts of candy in them. You get 3 little suction cup ninja stars. Any cups that you hit with the ninja stars, you win the candy inside of them. That one's always a lot of fun. We'll have Ghoul Catcher, which is ring tossed. We'll have the Ghost Flick Challenge, which, you know, the kids, some of the kids still into the bottle flip stuff. That's all it is. It's competitive bottle flipping to win candy. What else do we have this year? I think that covers it. I think that covers all of our games. We got 8 games that we're going to be going this year. We wanted to do a 9th, but we didn't quite have enough people to help out. But this event, like I said, we're going to kick it off at 6 o'clock. We'll have fog machines going, mood stuff. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll have some spooky music playing, or well, it'll be kind of kids music, but you know, Halloween music playing on the speakers. I will be the host of the event, so I will be on the microphone doing, like, letting people know when games are open, where games are open, and stuff like that. What's up, Worthy? Do I watch the NFL? No, I don't. I'm not really a big, watching sports guy. Like, I love to play sports. I'm just not huge on watching them. Now, when I was a kid, my dad, man, he was always a massive fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I grew up watching the Chiefs, and I watched them all up into my adult life until, well, you know, I was a homeless teenager. And even after that, I was in a position where we couldn't really afford a TV or anything for a long time. So I just kind of got out of the practice of watching sports. And then the games I wanted to see were never played down here. Of course, this was pre when things were streamed on the internet. You know, this was before that. I understand I could do it now, but I don't know, lost interest in it over the past 5 or 10 years. I'd rather play than watch a bunch of other people play, right? Though, like I said, I'm on here talking about our free Halloween event, Haunt the Concrete. It's our 11th annual. We give away over 30,000 pieces of candy. Here, I actually prefer to watch. Like, I kind of like to watch everybody play the game, see how much they enjoy, stuff like that. Worthy, that is one of the topics I do not discuss publicly. My father and my grandfather always used to tell me there are 2 things that are personal and you really shouldn't discuss publicly in a public setting. You know, keep them in private, and that was one of them. So that's a personal thing. I don't really talk about that kind of thing publicly. All right, so Harley, good to see you on here. Leanne Brummett, we'd be really, really happy to have you if you can come out to the event tonight. It is totally free and open to anyone in the community, so anyone can come. You can bring your friends. You can do all kinds of cool stuff, right? And like I said, anyone can play these games. If you got teenagers or teenagers want to come out and have fun, y'all can come out and play with us. If you're an adult and you just want to come out and have some fun and win some candy, you can come out and play as well. Favorite football player? I did have a favorite. I can't think of his name because he hasn't played in I don't know how long. He played for the Chiefs. He was one of their best kickoff returners of all time. He was a little dude, but he could run like nobody's business. So actually, I do have a favorite football player. I just cannot remember his name because I haven't talked about him in like a super long time. What is this channel for? No. I run a martial arts and parkour studio. So we often use this channel to do some funny videos related to martial arts, related to parkour, or even sometimes other sports. Now, when we do our live videos, we do a Peoples and Blog. They're all listed as Peoples and Blog usually. And what we focus on is character development, coping skills, parenting advice, business advice, advice for people who are struggling financially, who are homeless and things like that, because I was homeless at one point in my life. So when we go live, that's usually what we're talking about. No, it wasn't Tyreek Hill. I know who that is, but it wasn't Tyreek Hill. Man, you're gonna make me start Googling because now I can't remember. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Let me try this search. See if I can. Wasn't him. No, man, it's gonna take me. It'll take me a minute. That's gonna drive me nuts that I can't remember that dude's name. I used to love watching him though. But it was a long time ago. So, Dante Hall. I think it was Dante Hall that I was thinking of. Dante Hall was one of them. I really liked watching Dante Hall, and at the time that he played on the Chiefs, this was around 2005, 2006. There were some other people on the team as well that I liked watching. They had a really fun tight end to watch. He was really good at what he did. Yeah, Dante Hall. Yeah, legend. Yeah, no, I used to love watching Dante Hall. His kickoff returns were really something to see when he pulled it off. Yeah. So anyway, I got kind of off topic. But yeah, so if you're wondering what this channel is all about, a lot of times we get on here and give character development or parenting help, tips, advice, self-help, that sort of thing, because owning a martial arts and parkour studio, one of the things that we specialize in is behavior management for young kids, troubled youth, and helping them through those types of things. So usually that's something we'll talk about a lot on the channel. Sometimes I just get on there to talk about business and how hard it is to run a business and things like that, right? Sometimes I get on here to talk about character development or career paths, or I get on here to talk about all kinds of things. So this doesn't have like a direct niche channel. This is just something that we do a lot of stuff on. Thank you, Marissa. It's always great to have new followers. And then sometimes we do live videos that are based like that. I think the last couple lives we did, we started talking about discipline or something like that, and ended up sidetracked on to martial arts and fight sports and combat sports, or sidetracked onto parkour and tricking and flipping. Like I get easily sidetracked, if y'all can't tell. Unmedicated ADHD. So and not that I like am one of those, oh, don't take medications people. I'm not like that. The deal is also have bipolar disorder, so I've got to take medications for that, which counteract ADHD medications. So I can't take both. So this is what y'all got to deal with this, right? But yeah, so we're setting up that free party right now. We've got all the game sections sorted out. We are doing the ladies behind me right now. I don't know if y'all can see them moving around back there. They're doing decorations and stuff. So this is the front floor. This is where most of the games that little kids I think will like better will be on. The back floor will have the games the older kids would like. And it's different than traditional trick-or-treating, because here you're not just giving candy when you walk up. You get to actually play a game and use that to win candy. Do you think I will make it to the Super Bowl in my league? I don't know, man. I don't know. I think anything's possible. Because look, I was a homeless 16-year-old. No family. I mean, I had family, but it was kind of a disowned type situation. Like no support to speak of, no family to speak of, no couch to sleep on. Luckily, I did have a vehicle, slept on that. And I came from that to we're still a small business, but a relatively successful business that employs 6 people. So anything can happen if you work hard and you put your mind to it. I talk to my students about this all the time. One of my speeches I gave this last week was about one of the number one biggest contributing factors to whether you have a chance of succeeding at anything you try to do is whether you believe it's possible, right? So I deal with this in parkour and tricking all the time, because I always get kids that come in and they're like, okay, I want to learn a backflip. Oh, great. I can teach you way cooler stuff than a backflip, but you want to learn a backflip, we can get to that. And then I have to explain that in order to learn the backflip, I first need to get them comfortable going backwards and upside down. So we start off with back bends and macacos and Valdez and things like that, and then the back handspring until they're comfortable going backwards. Then we get onto the back flip, right? And so one of the things I'm always telling them is that every step of that line, there's a part of your brain that's just wired to tell you, no, don't do this, don't go upside down, don't go backwards, and it's terrifying, right? And so one of the first things you have to do to achieve your goals on something like that is you have to erase the doubt. You have to truly believe you can do it without a kernel of a doubt. But that's tough, because you might truly believe it, but then the second you jump backwards, your brain panics, right? That's that kernel of doubt. And in order to land a trick or do something really awesome, anything at all, career or otherwise, you have to truly believe it's possible for you to do it. So I talk about a couple of up-and-coming tricking students I have right now who watched my current, what would you call him, elder student in that class. He's still really young, but longest-running student in that class. And I have a couple students in that class who came up as little kids watching him land his first backflip, his first 540 kick, his first all 720 and all this stuff. And they looked at that, and instead of saying, oh, I wish I could do that, they went and said, I believe I could do that too if I work at it. And now they are doing that kind of thing. So one of the biggest contributing factors to be able to, whatever you do, make it to your league Super Bowl. Of course, that's a team sport, so it relies a little bit on everybody. Or maybe you want to be a great martial artist, or maybe you want to learn how to do flips, or maybe you just want to be good at something like knitting or crochet or crafts or woodworking or whatever, right? First, you just have to believe you're capable, and then you got to find an easy place to start and take steps to continue to challenge yourself as you build more skills until you become good at something. Now, at the point you become good at it, it can start to feel boring, because the things that used to be fun, the learning phases, are now become the work and training phases. And at that point, you want to make sure that you're getting some kind of enjoyment out of it, which usually comes from accolades or sales, if you're able to sell your product or whatever it might be. Hey, Leela, it's good to see you. Playing in y'all's Super Bowl in a week if we win against the champ. Well, good luck. Good luck. I hope it goes well for you. Just got to stay focused. You got to believe it's possible. You got to put it all out there and really play as hard as you possibly can. I'm not one of those like give 110% guys, right? Because honestly, even giving 100% sometimes isn't enough for success, or being really good at something sometimes isn't enough for success. You also have to have the right tactics to go with it, right? So I would suggest whatever team you're going against, take a look through some video and figure out like what's their bread and butter, what do they always send, and then see if you can adjust your defense or offense to figure out how to go around that. We do the same thing in combat sports. When I have fighters go to fights, it's like you don't want to go into a fight blind. Even if it's a sport, you don't want to go into the fight blind, because if you don't know what that other person does or is capable of or what they're good at, you can wind up on your heels before you know it, right? Going backwards and stuff like that. So I always say it's not just about giving everything you got. You also have to be adaptable. So when something's not working, or what I talk to my martial arts students about is, this is why you see pro fighters almost always spend the first 30 or 45 seconds to a minute and a half doing very little and just feeling each other out, because they're testing each other's responses to things. They're testing each other's skills so that they can figure out the best way to proceed. And then if they proceed with something and it fails on them, then they adapt and go into something else, right? They don't just keep trying to do the same thing, even if it's not working. Because you can have a fighter that's way more skilled than their opponent, but loses because they don't adapt to their opponent. So what you got to do is make sure you know a little bit about the fighter you're going against. Make sure you know their favorite tactics, their favorite techniques, their favorite things to do, and then have plans in place that you actively train in the weeks leading up to it. And this applies to all sports, team sports, everything else. It applies to business too. Look, I run a business. I apply this same concept to business. It's one of those things. And then, like I say, when you get to that point that you really want to get good at something, you want to learn something, and you believe you can do it, you got to that point, then you just have to find an easy place to start. For like backflips, for example, that's a macaco. If you don't know what a macaco is, there's a very simple version of it where you just basically get on your hands and feet in like a crab position facing upward, and you swing your arm up and jump around your other arm. It's an easy place to start for kids and adults. And then, they work their way up from there and keep pushing that doubt until that doubt disappears. Once that doubt disappears, then they can start hitting the tricks and stuff like that. I've never been a 110% type person. Like you can only really, I'm a math, like super logical person, so you can only give 100%. But I am the type of person who's always going to say, push your boundaries. Push the boundaries as hard as you can. Go past what you're capable of if possible, right? Or at least attempt it, And that's what we do with these free events we do too. So like this Halloween party, or 4 times a year, we host a Teammate Kids party that's also free to the community. And we always do this thing for martial arts. It gets talked about a lot in martial arts, but it's kind of a Japanese concept. There's a word, I'm probably going to butcher it, but I believe it's pronounced kaizen or kaizen. And essentially what that means is it's sort of a method. Kaizen is sort of a method of constant improvement. So the purpose of kaizen is, let's say I attempt something, right? And then I take a second to process what I attempted and ask myself what went wrong. I pick one thing that I think went wrong, and the next time I attempt it, I try to fix that one thing. And of course, it's probably going to go wrong again. And so then I go, okay, what went wrong that time? And then I fix one little thing about it. And it's also our teaching philosophy here for martial arts and parkour. We only ever correct one thing at a time. Sometimes I have parents that get a little upset. Well, he's not throwing that kick right, and y'all are just giving him one correction at a time. He needs to start all over. No, because one correction at a time is all we can mentally think about at a time. And if we make one correction at a time, well, across 2 weeks, we make 6, 7, 10 corrections, and now all of a sudden that technique is great, right? So Kaizen, constant improvement, it just means every time you make an attempt at something, try to improve one tiny step at a time. Just do one thing that you think went wrong with your last attempt and try to fix it. And we do the same thing with these free events. We do the same thing with the classes we teach, right? Yeah, I love math too. It's always my favorite, simply because math always had a straightforward process. I always liked math because no matter how complicated it got, there was still a straightforward step-by-step process. That doesn't really apply to grammar, where this rule applies sometimes and not other times, and this rule applies sometimes and not other times. That stuff drives me nuts. So I didn't do as well in English when I was in school. Leela, that makes sense. If I do something like my form, for example, end up trying to fix everything about it. Yeah, well, if you try to fix everything at once, you start to feel overwhelmed, and it causes the doubt in your mind to grow. Because you start thinking, I'm a long way from being where I want to be, and there's so much stuff I have to do to get there, and I'll never be able to do it, and I'll never get there. And that, look, doubt kills more dreams than failure ever thought about killing, right? This is something I tell my classes all the time. Doubt will kill your dreams way faster than fear will. Fear can be overcome, doubt can be overcome, but a lot of people have an easier time overcoming fear than they do doubt. And I know that seems really, really strange, but in my experience teaching kids and adults, it's absolutely true. So the trick is, stop trying to focus too hard on the end result you're going for. So you're talking about forms here, kata, right? So stop trying to focus too hard on the end result you're going for, and focus on getting one move at a time exactly the way you want it to be. Quick chamber, quick explosive movement, good deep stance, stability, and don't just try to fix all that at once. Pick one thing. Okay, well, I want to fix the stability in my form, so I'm going to make sure I pay special attention to certain stances, right? Or I want to fix the speed of my form, or the snappiness of my form. Okay, don't worry about the stances. Focused on how you're moving your hands, how you're moving your chambers, how you're breathing, things like that. And just pick one thing at a time. And then when you start to feel like you're getting where you want to be with that thing, then pick a new thing and start working on that thing. Then when you put it all together at the end, you're going to be where you were trying to go. But if you always are looking at the end goal, the end result that's 10, 20, 30, 100 steps away, doubt starts to creep in heavily and causes you to think, well, I'll just quit. I'll just give up. There's no way I'll ever get that far. But truth of the matter is anybody can get that far with consistency, right? If you keep consistently fixing one thing at a time, you're going to get there. And so in order to do that, you have to make sure that you fix just one thing at a time. Then instead of focusing on the end goal, you're just focused on the next step. Okay, the next step to get where I want to be is to fix my hand motion. The next step to get where I want to be is fix my stance. Or in business, the next step to get where I want to be is to figure out how to generate interest in my business. And then the step after that is to figure out how to sell people on what I do. The third step might be figuring out or making sure that whatever I'm selling, the clients are getting more value out of it than what I have to charge for it in order to keep the place open. So like every business has this sort of calculation they got to figure out about how much they have to charge in order to keep the place open and pay all the bills and pay the staff and all of that. And so they have to try to do that while at the same time making sure that the experience the clients are having is worth more than what they have to pay, or that they feel is worth more than what they have to pay for the service, the product, or whatever it might be, right? And that's how you balance pricing and quality. And if at a certain point in time, there's two ways you can price yourself out of your market. And I've made both mistakes in the past. One of those ways is, for example, oh, we've got a lot of students, classes are full, this, that, and the other, so we're going to up the rate we charge and then up it and up it. But you get to a certain point where people go, we love your program, we think it's worth the money, we want to be able to pay that money, but we simply can't afford it, so we have to go to the cheap place down the street, right? So that's one way that you can price yourself out. You could have a product that's worth $300 a month and people would be happy to pay $300 a month for it, but if they don't have $300 a month, they can't. See what I'm saying? That's one way to price yourself out of your market. The other way to price yourself out of your market is simply not providing a good enough experience, right? So let's take that same thing and say we charge $100 a month, but the experience is kind of crappy. The instructors aren't good teachers. They don't know what they're doing. They're not working on behavioral management. They're not backing up the parents. They're not working on character development. None of that stuff is involved. Then they might feel like that $100 is too expensive for that class for what they get out of it. Does it make sense? Instead of getting what they want out of it, but that same person might be willing to pay $150 a month, $200 a month, $175 a month, whatever, somewhere else if they know that the instructors are trained to teach. They know the instructors are trained to work with at-risk youth. They know the instructors are trained on behavioral management and physical therapy stuff and things like that, and character development and things like that. If they know the teachers or see the teachers are experts in those fields, then they're probably going to be willing to pay a little bit more. And they're going to have to pay a little bit more because in order to have instructors that are qualified in that requires having a leadership training type thing, right? So all of our instructors not only are trained in their arts here, but they are also trained in how to teach behavioral management, character development, and things like that. Now, yes, I do have some lead instructors that are 14 and 15 years old, but guess what? They went through 6 years of this leadership training and learning how to teach, learning how to break things down, learning how to present to kids, learning how to manage difficult behaviors, learning how to handle difficult behaviors one-on-one, learning how to work with troubled youth. So yes, you might come to some of my classes and there might be a 14 or 15-year-old leading the class, but just watch what they're doing. You will see how professional they are. They are as good at this as I've ever been, right? Even if they're young, but they've had to train for longer than most people go to college for their job in order to do this, So I told y'all I was easily distracted. Y'all got me way off topic for the event. But yeah, just one more time, shout out to Haunted Concrete. We are going to be at the Peaceful Warrior Studio, 3597 Northwest 32nd Street, Newcastle, Oklahoma, 73065. We're right there on Highway 37, in between Newcastle and Tuttle, building with the blue awnings, right next to a big construction site that's all dirt right now. And you can park up and down the street beside us, front of the parking lot, back of the parking lot, whatever, because we had to move the event completely inside. And so we're going to have it both inside the front floor and inside the back floor. So we'll have all the games I described earlier, all the carnival fun style games to win 30,000 pieces of candy are going to be there. Do I watch the UFC? Look, man, I do this for a living. You got to understand that I do this for a living. So if I am in my free time, do you do what you do for a living during your free time? Because I don't. I need time away from what I do to process it. Now, I won't say I don't watch UFC. What I will say is I don't watch it for entertainment. I don't watch it for my free time. You know what I mean? So I typically don't watch whole fights. I will check out clips and highlight reels and things like that to kind of see what different fighters are doing. Honestly, I feel like there's a lot of fighters out there that are good fighters. They beat my butt any day of the week. But, that are missing some key things that certain other fighters are using that work really well for them. But, every fighter's missing something. That's the thing, right? Do I watch it? Not as a fan. However, all of my social media is full, and I do this on purpose. My algorithms feed me martial arts, parkour, and capoeira videos only, right? Pretty much that's all the algorithm. I train the algorithm so that's all it shows me. And so I can go through and pick out videos like, oh, look, there's one of our techniques being used in a UFC match. Oh, look, there's this, so that I can use that stuff for marketing and things along those lines. But no, I don't watch UFC for fun. I don't find watching violence fun, to be honest. I know I'm a martial artist, and that sounds weird, but I'm kind of a bit of a pacifist. Always have been. I've been in my share of fights and things like that, and that's why I really don't like fighting. Now, I do appreciate sports and combat sports. I have a competition team here that competes in kickboxing events. We compete in some grappling events as well, and I've had a few people go on to fight amateur MMA up here in Oklahoma at Rage in the Cage, and I will go watch their fights to support, when I get the chance, things like that. But am I a fan? No, not really. Now, there are some fighters I follow a little closer than others because of what I do, right? So I am a bit of a fan of fighters like GSP, who was Kyokushin Karate, right? Very old school traditional karate. Fan of Anderson Silva and his Taekwondo background. Of course, he doesn't fight anymore. I've always been a fan of Wonderboy Thompson because he got his start as a point fighter, which a lot of people make fun of point fighting because of the rule set. But understand that point fighting is meant to be an amateur sport that greatly reduces your risk of any injury so that you can come back to work on Monday, right? Point fighting was only ever meant to be an amateur sport, and full contact kickboxing was originally built off of point fighting. So some of the biggest point fighters in the 60s and 70s, like Bill Superfoot Wallace, Benny the Jet, Chuck Norris obviously was part of that group. They broke off and started the first American full contact kickboxing, right? So, which I think kind of, set the stage for what we see as like glory kickboxing and stuff like that today. But Wonderboy, to get back on track, Wonderboy Thompson was originally a high level, like top in the country point fighter. And so I love being able to point to that and go, look, there's a point fighter that cross-trained and learned in the UFC. Now, what we do is not point fighting. I want to point that out. My competition team does point fighting. My regular classes, we have less rules than MMA in our sparring. We do wear a lot more gear. Headgear, face shields, our insurance requires us to wear a lot of that stuff. And we have to keep light contact to the head. No one needs to be trying to go to work with a concussion, because I've got people in their 60s training here for health. I've got people in their 40s training here for fun and socialization. And I've got kids training here. I've got teenagers training here as a extra on top of, conditioning on top of their regular sport and things like that. Not everybody is here trying to be, actually very few people are here trying to become a pro fighter. And even when I do have a person that kind of wants to be a pro fighter, they never have what it takes. I don't want to say that the wrong way, but like the last person that reached out talking to want to be a pro fighter, but they had no experience, thought that training 1 hour a week was too much. Like if you want to go pro, you got to train 4 or 5 hours a day. 1 hour a week is too much. That's, you know what I mean? That's always been a problem for me. And our sparring, we call it self-defense sparring because we allow kick catches, sweeps, takedowns, grabs, grappling, joint locks, chokes, all of it, elbows, knees, all of it is allowed in our sparring, right? You're allowed to hit to the back of the head. You're allowed to stomp on the ground, not hard, right? Not injuring your partner, but you're allowed to simulate those types of techniques, including kicks and knees to the groin and things like that, because I want most of my students are here for a little bit of fitness, a little bit of practical self-defense, and to build confidence. So my classes are all more built in practical self-defense style sparring, right? I started the competition team. Well, this is the second time I started the competition team, mainly because I wanted my local area to see us legitimately as a sport. Because a lot of people are like, oh, we love doing martial arts, but we leave for 6 months of the year because, well, martial arts just isn't a sport, and we want our kids to compete in sports. So we started the competition team so people would take us seriously as a sport. What is your specialty? Okay, well, that's good. That's going to be a long topic, but I'll try to cut it down, right? When I was a kid, I trained in Kenpo for 3 years. Then I trained in Shotokan for 2, trained in Judo for 3, and that was about it because I was homeless at 16 and kind of stopped training, right? Now, by the time I was 22, 23, my hips were shot from my job. My hips wouldn't rotate internally or externally worth a crap. I was having a lot of lower back pain because of it. So I got a chance. A guy offered to trade me some work to take his Taekwondo classes. And I thought, Taekwondo is a kicking art. Maybe that'll help my hips, right? So that's actually what I got my first black belt in. But don't think like Olympic style Taekwondo. This wasn't a WTF school. This was an ITF school, which is a little bit more combative Taekwondo where they punch to the face and things like that. Like punches actually count. So it's not like what most people think of when they think of Taekwondo. But I did get to work my hips and made a lot of progress. But by the time I went for my first degree, I still couldn't kick very high, like maybe waist level. But the reason I was like a mediocre student at best. Like I tried hard, but I didn't have a lot of physical capability. So I was kind of middle of the pack. I was never going to be no pro fighter, that kind of thing. And but I learned how to fight the people with the high kicking abilities and stuff like that by using sweeps and joint locks and knocking them off balance and things like that. And so I figured out how to make it work. Now, it didn't work at first. At first, I got kicked in the head a lot. But then as I figured it out, my sweep game got real good. And when my sweep and clinch game got good, then those high kicks and those quick boxers, I was able to start handling them, right? Now, that's about the time I started teaching. And what I found out was I am a far better teacher than I am a martial artist. Far better. Now, I still train in martial arts. I love it. I train it as both a sport and self-defense. I train it physically. But I am a far better teacher than I am martial artist. Now, when I got back into teaching, I was just teaching that ITF Taekwondo, and I got bored with that curriculum because it was all stand-up kickboxing, and some of the forms incorporated some grappling and stuff, but there was no cohesive curriculum to it, right? So then I started taking jiu-jitsu. I did jiu-jitsu for 5 years. I've done capoeira for 10. Did Muay Thai for 3. And what I did is when I got tired of that Taekwondo curriculum, I went, you know what? I'm going to take stuff from other arts that work really well in sparring, that I like to use in sparring, and I'm going to make them part of my curriculum, right? Even though it's not Taekwondo, right? So the first thing we added was grappling and jiu-jitsu. So for our beginner, and it's just a base level of jiu-jitsu. I don't want to say that like our black belt is the equivalent of a black belt jiu-jitsu. No, not like that. But what we did do is our beginner curriculum covers all the main body positions, different sweeps and escapes from those body positions, ways to hold people in those body positions, and basically how to move through body positions. Our intermediate and advanced curriculum takes that, and then we give some of the easiest to pull off submissions when someone is striking. So stuff that's more sport-based, that's very difficult to do against a striking opponent, we kind of threw that out, and we kept the stuff that's easier to do as submissions against a striking opponent, right? So we kept that in the curriculum, and that became our grappling curriculum. I don't really like calling it a jiu-jitsu curriculum because we also mix in Muay Thai clinch work, Muay Thai clinch strikes, and some Muay Thai joint lock takedowns into that grappling. So it's not just jiu-jitsu, if that makes sense. We have a couple of judo throws in there as well that I like, that I'm able to make use, even though I'm a smaller statured man. I mean, most of my life I weighed $130. I'm pretty small. I'm only 150 now, right? I'm like 5'7", 5'8". So I've always been pretty small. I'd be a featherweight, and mixed a little bit of that in. The next part of the curriculum we added was what we call our blue stripes. So what we did is we took specific common attacks like being pushed up against a wall, headlocks, bear hugs, rear naked choke, things like that. And we created a series. We took what we found to be the best pressure tested techniques, 4 or 5 techniques for each situation that the pressure tested the best. And those became our curriculum for the blue stripes. And we incorporate striking into that as well. And then we expanded on our forms because I like forms. I don't like how forms are taught. I like kata. I don't like how kata is taught in a lot of places, because every place I ever trained would train you kata, and they would talk about the physical prowess you get out of, like, we need a deep horse stance to throw good side and hook kicks. And I agree with all that, but they wouldn't explain what the techniques and the forms were for or how they work. So I finally did several pieces of training under several instructors to piece together actual tested self-defense combative applications built into the forms. And what I discovered is that there's a lot more grappling and standing joint lock and things like that in these traditional forms than people think. So when you see weird movements like these square blocks, for example, they can be used against an inside clinch. They can be used to break a headlock grip and a standing headlock. They can be used to block a slap and strike the face. Like, there's lots and lots of uses for them. Spear knuckles. Like, I used to think that's like the dumbest technique ever. I wouldn't want to punch somebody like that. But then as I got to training with people, I found out these spear knuckles usually come with a turn and represent some sort of hip throw, or what I call thread the needle takedowns, or push-pull takedowns, or grabs. And that's usually what they represent, or just applying pressure to the side of the neck in a choke. That's what they usually represent. So that's what I teach those as, right? And there's lots of things in martial arts. Like, I have a couple of videos explaining these moves right here, which look really weird, but they're meant to try to give you a defense against a wrestler. So when we talk about wrestling in my studio, we talk about your first line of defense is your head. So if they drop their head, you drop yours, right? If they get under your head, your second line of defense is to wrap them under your arms and stand them back up, right? If they get under that, your next line of defense is to sprawl out, right? And this is part of the sprawl motion, where we use our elbow to jam the shoulder, reach our bottom hand to their hip, right? So we're reaching towards the top of their leg with the bottom hand and jamming their shoulder with the top while we lean down to try to kind of prevent them from shooting for a double leg or something like that, allowing us an extra second to sprawl. And so I teach not just forms, but I teach combative applications from those forms, and I expect my students to train them when they spar, because you can't just train the technique. You know what I mean? Just training the technique over and over, like some old karate students used to do, doesn't mean you figure out how to use it in a fight, right? So I think sparring is ultra important. So you have to make sure that not only are you just drilling applications of techniques, but that you're actually training them. And this is where I'm a big fan of jiu-jitsu's philosophy, because they have that philosophy of, we're going to work on techniques for 15 to 30 minutes, and then we're going to spend 20 minutes trying to use that technique in a match, right? And I really like that, because learning a technique in a drill is not the same as learning how to use it in a match, a fight, a competition, right? So I'm a really big fan of making sure that you pressure test techniques inside of sparring. And of course, nothing is going to work all the time. You know what I mean? So my specialty, honestly, is capoeira, if I must say. I also teach a capoeira program, and I'm probably better at that than any of my other martial arts. But if you're going into the martial arts world, my 2 best specialties are clinch work and sweeps. Base foot sweeps, things like that, hook sweeps, foot sweeps, pull sweeps, step sweeps. Those are kind of my bread and butter. And because of capoeira, because capoeira is full of sweeps. And through capoeira, I learned how to tell if I set up a sweep based on my opponent's weight distribution over whether that sweep will work or not. And so I translate that into my self-defense style sparring by understanding when someone has their weight distributed just right to know when a sweep will work. So that's kind of my specialty. I also very much enjoy standing joint locks. And no, I don't mean necessarily like the old wrist control stuff. I'm talking about shoulder locks and things that you can do from standing and set up side clinches and takedowns. Not the greatest at takedowns, mostly because of my small stature. I can do some takedowns, I can do some throws, but if I'm going against somebody 60 pounds heavier or more, which is not uncommon, then I don't go for takedowns. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go on the ground with a guy that's got 60, 80 pounds on me. because I don't know his skills. Now, I do have some jiu-jitsu skills, so if he has no skill on the ground, I'll be fine. But if this is like a guy that's got 70, 80 pounds on me and he has some skill in wrestling or jiu-jitsu, I about said a word I shouldn't say on live, but I'm done, right? I'm cooked. So my specialty is probably more related to sweeps, low kicks, leg kicks, that sort of thing, and clinch work. Also want to learn MMA, but where I come from, MMA gyms are super rare. Yeah, and look, there used to be several MMA gyms where I'm at, the greater Oklahoma City area, but the problem is none of them had teachers who actually had MMA experience or any type of traditional martial arts experience. They were just kind of basing it off UFC highlights, basing what they taught off of UFC commentators. And, anyone that's fought competitively at all, even on an amateur level, will know that that's not enough, right? That's not enough because that doesn't get into the tactics and when and how and where and how to apply things and all that. So I know a lot of those places didn't make it. Now, we are an MMA studio by technicality. I do not market my studio as MMA, though. We market our studio as a martial arts studio. So we're Peaceful Warriors Martial Arts and Parkour. The reason we don't market it as MMA is because I'm trying to run a studio that everybody can get something out of. I'm trying to run a studio that helps kids build confidence, that helps kids develop strong character, that helps adults develop strong character. That's the important part to me, right? I want them to be able to defend themselves and fight too, don't get me wrong. I definitely want a quality curriculum, and every year I rewrite our curriculum. Literally every 2 years, our curriculum gets rewritten to be improved, to have crappier techniques removed, better techniques added, that sort of thing. Better drills added, stuff like that. We are constantly doing that kind of thing. And so what we train is technically MMA because we do 5 weeks of kickboxing tactics, 5 weeks of grappling and clinch work, 5 weeks of self-defense work from certain grabs and attacks, 5 weeks of forms, and 3 weeks of sparring, and 3 weeks of form applications. And we also end up sparring across all that time. We end up sparring about 8 to 12 weeks of sparring throughout that whole curriculum. So we kind of intersperse the sparring with techniques. So first 2 weeks of kickboxing, you're going to learn kickboxing techniques. Next 2 weeks, you're going to be using them in sparring, and you're also allowed to use wrestling, grappling, and all of that as well, right? Because I want my students to be well-rounded and be able to handle anything. So we are very much technically an MMA school, mixed martial arts. But problem is a lot of places market themselves as MMA schools but don't have any traditional background. And so when we tried marketing ourselves in an MMA school, people came in and they were like, well, I don't want to learn the forms, and I don't want to learn that kick. I think a round kick is the only kick you need, and I don't want to learn a side kick or a hook kick. I don't want to learn spin kicks. I don't want to learn getting out of a headlock. I don't want to learn forms. I don't want to learn joint locks. And so because they just wanted to learn a round kick and some boxing combos, thinking they could go fight MMA with that. Now, if you're good enough at it, sure, right? But you got to get really, really good at that sort of thing to be able to win just with that. Yes, I'm in Newcastle, Oklahoma. That's where I'm at, Newcastle, Oklahoma. And we have students that come from as far as Lindsay. I've got a couple students from Lawton, just like an hour away from here. We got students from North Oklahoma City, South Oklahoma City, Westmore. Got students from Norman. Students from Mustang, students from Yukon. You'd be surprised. We draw students from all around. We typically average a little over 200 students at any given time. But I got sidetracked. What I was trying to say is I didn't want to market my gym as just a place for pro fighters or people who wanted to be pro fighters, because people who want to do that notoriously don't have the money to afford classes. You know what I mean? And notoriously do not have the discipline it takes to get to that level. Because if you're going to make your gym like that, you have to have pretty few students, and they have to be hardcore. All of them have to be hardcore. That means you're going to have very few students. That means you're going to have to charge $300, $400, $500 a month, and you're going to have them training 2 or 3 hours a day, pretty much every day, right? And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to have an impact in my community. I wanted to use martial arts to empower people who didn't necessarily want to be pro fighters, but wanted to learn how to defend themselves and be proficient at it. Wanted to learn how to fight and be proficient if they needed to. And wanted to build character development and learn about have their kids learn about integrity and discipline and perseverance and compassion and empathy and all grit and all those kind of things. So we have a word of the week thing that we do. But because that's what I wanted to focus on, have we trained a couple of people that went on to be pro? Yeah. And if I have a student that wants to do that and they legit train hard enough, I have connections. I might not be able to give you a direct path to a pro career, but I have connections that can. And so if someone gets to that level and I think they can handle it and they really want to do it, I'll use my connections to help a student proceed, right? However, I don't market as MMA because, like I said, when you market as MMA, pretty much only attract people that want to be competitive pro fighters, and that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to help the shy kids, the nerdy kids, the geeky kids. I wanted to help the same type of adults, the shy adults, the ones that aren't physical and not sporty, learn that they could be sporty, that they can be athletic as long as they enjoy what they're doing. But you can take someone who is not an athlete, never been athletic, and you can turn them into being athletic if they enjoy it, if they're having fun doing it. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where I sit and why I teach the curriculum that I teach, but I don't market it as MMA. I simply market it as a martial arts program that incorporates kickboxing, grappling, self-defense, and traditional martial arts all together. Because as soon as you market it as MMA, people come in and are like, well, you're teaching traditional martial arts. I want to learn MMA. See, people think MMA is a style. Too many people think MMA is a style. MMA is not a style. MMA is a competitive rule set that allows any type of martial arts to compete. But here in America, nobody understands that. Everybody thinks that MMA is its own martial arts style, and it's simply not, right? It never was. So when I marketed as MMA, people would come in here and then be like, well, this is more like traditional martial arts. This is crap. I don't want to learn it. Like, and I'd point out, like, look, I just rattle off a dozen high-name UFC fighters who are all traditionally trained. Well, but I don't know. I always heard karate was stupid, and I get it. There's a lot of karate studios out there taught by unqualified instructors who do not know much about their art and just do it for their own ego, all right? And you can always see it in their students because their students, don't have a lot of skill, which is why I'm not afraid to post videos of my students and their sparring and things like that because I'm proud of what they can do. Like, I'm very proud of what they can do. Because they're legit, man. And no, they're not pro level, right? But like better than amateur, you know what I mean? Or at least really good for amateurs. But are all my students that way? No. I have a lot of students who couldn't fight their way out of a wet paper bag, but they still come in and work hard, and they learn the curriculum, and they do their best, and they make improvements, and they get better every day, and they deserve just as much recognition as people who are more physically skilled, right? So the way we base it is everybody has a different starting line. So your grading is based on your progress since your last starting line. So each rank is a starting line, and we base your advancement on how much you've improved since you last advanced, right? Not everybody has to pass the same bar of quality. It's not about that. Because I've trained people with cerebral palsy that can barely walk. I've trained lots of people on the autistic spectrum. I've trained people with Down syndrome, right? You really think that they should be able to have to meet the same bar that you have that teenage wrestler pass? Like, because if I have a teenage wrestler in here, I'm going to set their bar way higher than I'm going to set, And so it depends, because everybody has a different starting line. So skill depends on that. So I always tell my students, rank has nothing to do with skill. It has to do with how long you've been training, how hard you're trying, and stuff like that. But some of my students, their starting line was way back behind these students' starting line. So I don't have that kind of thing going on. But that's basically how it works. So thank you, Wrestling Side, for the good conversation. Thank you, Leela. I will see you later tonight. Guys, come to the free Haunt the Concrete party. Watch back the video again. I went over all the games we're going to play. We have Zombie Nerf Shootout that's new this year. We have Alucard's Battle Arena. We have Swamp Doctor. We have Candy Pong. That I think is self-describing, right? Bouncing a ping pong ball into cups of candy to win it. And we're going to be giving away over 30,000 pieces of candy. This is an all-age event. Anyone can come, any age. We're kicking off right at 6 o'clock, and we're going to go till we either run out of candy or till 9 o'clock. We're going to try to space the candy out to make sure we run till 9 o'clock. So if you come in early, we might be a little bit more stingy with the candy, just a small handful at a time. As the night goes, we're probably going to start giving out more and more, kind of depending on how the event goes, ebbs and flows, right? Because we can never tell. Last year, we saved too much candy for the last hour and a half, and about halfway through the event, most people, it was crowded for the first half, and then the second half was almost nothing. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But if anyone comes and we are out of candy, I will take your name and phone number, and I will personally get your kids something, or you something, to make up for it, right? All right, see you tonight, Leela. Until I see you guys again, be the best teammate you can be. Be the best at being you. Why y'all